Yes, so both President Trump and Kamala Harris were on the campaign trail yesterday or on Wednesday in the U.S. Kamala Harris was speaking in New Hampshire, unveiling her economic plan, and she actually went off script because the shooting happened just before she hit the stage in New Hampshire. She essentially talked about the need for gun control and said that it didn't need to be this way, talking about how American children go to school, but in the back of their heads oftentimes have these thoughts about school shootings. So definitely offering the run-of-the-mill, normal Democratic response to when these shootings happen here in the U.S. Now, President Trump was in battleground Pennsylvania. He was doing a Fox News town hall with conservative talk show host Sean Hannity. He was asked about this, and he talked about having to heal our world. So definitely a very different response from Kamala Harris, the vice president. Oftentimes we hear President Trump and other Republicans obviously veer away from this idea of gun control. They'd rather come at it from the mental health point of view, but two very different responses to a shooting that, has once again made major news here in the U.S.
Meanwhile, Julia, the Harris and Trump campaigns battle over patriotism and military service is heating up. What is the latest line coming from the two sides?
It's interesting because we've seen both campaigns try to use, like you said, patriotism and military service to define one another. There was a top story here in the U.S. It's arguably still a top story last week during the anniversary of the Afghanistan withdrawal from the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. Former President Trump visited Arlington National Cemetery just down the street from me here over in Virginia. And he was in a part of the cemetery that is restricted normally. They don't have photo ops. It's where soldiers that have recently died in war have been buried. And there was reportedly a confrontation between members of Trump's campaign staff and an official at Arlington who had asked them to not be taking pictures, not be taking video. And the Army confirmed there was a confrontation, said they would not be pressing charges. Trump and his team obviously denying that. But the damage, I think, to the Trump campaign has been done in many ways, with Harris and Democrats seizing on this, saying that he used the cemetery as a political stunt. So that's one end of this. But on the other side of this, you have Vice President Harris's running mate, Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. He is a veteran of the National Guard, but he has come under scrutiny for as the campaign has said, the Harris campaign, misspeaking about his military service, saying that he carried a weapon of war. The Harris campaign said he did not do that. And then Republicans have called him out for deciding to run for Congress before his unit was deployed overseas. So definitely some back and forth over this idea of military and patriotism. But it's interesting because neither the top of the ticket, Harris or Walz, they are not, or Harris and Trump, they are not veterans. However, their running mates, Tim Walz, National Guard, and J.D. Vance, a Marine Corps veteran, they both have been, going back and forth over this issue.
And what has the response been? What do the latest polls say about who is the preferred candidate at this stage?
So it's very, very close. I would say that Harris is leading. Our analysis at The Hill and our partners at Decision Desk HQ show Harris with a 55% chance of winning the election. Now, that's taking polls into account, but it's also taking in fundraising numbers and voter enthusiasm, et cetera. So she is leading right now. But what's interesting is that her poll numbers have stayed pretty steady. A lot of candidates oftentimes get these post-party convention bounces coming out of their, respective parties. So after the DNC, we did not see that Kamala Harris, or the Democratic National Convention, we did not see that the vice president got a major bounce in polling. We have seen the polls really continue to narrow, and I think we can expect that going forward. Now, you can look at this from a national perspective and look at all the states, all Americans combined, but at the end of the day, this election is going to be decided in a number of key battleground states, including Pennsylvania, where our average shows Harris only leading by 0.1%.
Wow, it is so tight, and we don't know what is going to happen. And also important is what happens in the TV debate that happens next week. What do you think we can expect?
So, look, there's likely going to be a lot of animosity between these two candidates. This is the first time Harris and Trump have faced each other on stage. What's interesting is that we know that their mics will be muted. This was a point of contention between the Harris and Trump campaign. Trump's campaign wanting the mics to be muted, like they were during the CNN debate between Trump and Biden. But Harris's campaign did not want that, though we hear that they have accepted that. So we could still see some interruptions, though it might be a little harder to tell for those of us watching at home. But we'll definitely see that animosity. And I'm curious to see how much, there is a debate on policy. Former President Trump has gotten a lot of criticism for delving into these personal attacks on Kamala Harris and not attacking her on policy. But I think there's a big opportunity for him to do so. She's been releasing parts of her economic plan. And we know that Trump has very much, presented himself as a pro-business candidate, being a former businessman himself. So, we'll see if it's policy-centric or gets more personal.
And controversially, a high-profile Republican has said she'll vote for Kamala Harris. What has the daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney said?
Well, she's recently said that she would endorse Kamala, or would vote for Kamala Harris, I should say. I don't think it's necessarily surprising. We know that she has been very critical of former President Trump because she's become quite frankly, the most prominent anti-Trump voice within the Republican Party. So it's not particularly surprising, but it's still newsworthy because even though Liz Cheney is seen as someone who is very anti-Trump, she's also seen as someone who's a staunch conservative. In fact, when she was in Congress, she had one of the most conservative voting records out of any member of Congress. She's also the daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney, a major former figure in or used to be a major figure within the Republican Party, still has a legacy in the party. So that's what makes this so interesting. And we know that Kamala Harris has received the endorsements of other anti-Trump Republicans, former Illinois Congressman Adam Kinzinger, for example, former Trump press secretary Stephanie Grisham. Those two people spoke at the Democratic National Convention. So it goes to show that the Harris campaign is really trying to zero in on this never Trump wing of the Republican Party.
Julia, always great to get your thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you.